All right, welcome back to Josh the Word TV, where I talk about food, fitness, and fate. Today, I got a little story that I want to share. I want to share a story back in 2007, 2008. It's a story of one of my friends. His name was Miguel Robles. Met this good guy in a federal prison, and I just wanted to share a story. I don't know what's the maybe the theme of the story, but I just always wanted to. I always remember this story of his situation, right? So Miguel Robles, this was a guy. He was a he was a paisa. He was out of a state called Michoacan, Mexico, and he was a very great friend of mine's. And he had a hustle in prison where he would wash people's clothes, iron your clothes, iron shoes, because he didn't have nothing coming in. So in prison, there was a lot of hustles, right? People would always do every different type of hustles, either washing clothes, shining shoes, fix your radios, tattoos. Man, there was all type of hustles, right? And this guy, uh, Robles, right? He was such a good friend of mine, right? Because eventually we started doing business together, right? He would always have my clothes ready, like for visits. He would have it all ironed up. He would always wash my clothes every weekend. I think for a load, it will be like I don't know $2 or $3 or something like that. So for those that didn't really have that much family support out in the streets, and I did, so I would kind of contribute to his hustle. And I liked the dude. He was a real good dude, a real humble guy. He was bilingual, so he spoke very good English, and I wanted to share his little situation. And let me share his little case first. He was a second offender of illegal entry, so he was in there for immigration, right? And this prison where I was at when I think it was like my first, I think it was my second year in this prison. It was a federal prison. It got flooded with all illegal entries, right? So a lot of these paisas, they kind of took over the yard. They didn't run the yard, but they took over the yard with numbers. And a lot of them was there just for illegal entry, but a lot of them did have a crime. Either they were selling drugs, or they had some kind of it was minor or felony crimes, but it was still federal because they was getting ready to get deported. And at that prison, we had an INS court, so they would be able to go to do do their time there and go see an INS judge and get sent away, right? But they had to do their time first. Now this guy Miguel, this friend of mine, I'm gonna share his story before I talk about his situation, which to me was very funny. Very funny but sad at the same time, and that's part of the consequences of doing time. Um, so he he got arrested in the 90s for illegal entry, right? For his first time. He did like 2 years, and he got arrested on some petty crime, but it had to do with drugs, but it was nothing major. Feds got a hold of him. He did fed time. He did like I don't know 18 to 24 months. From 24 months, he got deported, and he was able to come back into the states. And he came back in the states, and he didn't want to get into no trouble because he just wanted to be back on the land, right? And he didn't want to be in Mexico. He wanted to live here in LA. So he got a good job, and he was able to get back on his feet, stay with his family, and eventually he remarried. He got another wife, and then they got a baby boy. And then eventually one day he was driving to work. He was trying to be a good person to society, even though he was there illegally, right? He was driving and he got pulled over. Now he got pulled over with a because of a broken tail light. And with this broken tail light, when the cop pulled him over, he didn't have no ID. So the cop didn't assume that he was an illegal immigrant or anything like that because he spoke good English. but they still had to take him in because they had to find out who he was, if he had any warrants or anything. But at the time of the arrest, he was trying to like trying to resist, like, hey man, dude, I'm just going to work. I got a broken tail light. I gotta get to my job. And so the cop was kind of being suspicious of him because the way he was acting, right? He wasn't being calm. And my boy Miguel told me, he said if he really would have been calm, he felt that the cop probably would have let him go, but he was acting scared. So a cop can tell, you know what I mean, when either you're acting suspicious or the intuition of something ain't right. So eventually he said, you know what? Hey, I'm sorry, but I gotta take you in. I have no information on you. I don't know, you might be a fugitive, you might have a record, or you might be wanted for something. So I'm gonna book you in and I'm gonna take you in, and if anything, we'll release you tomorrow, right? We'll kick you out. And he was like, nah man, whatever. So eventually he went to jail. He went to jail. They ran his fingerprints, and when they ran his fingerprints, eventually his case showed up that he wasn't supposed to be in the States. And they're like, hey, didn't you get deported in the 90s and you're back here or something like that, right? So now the feds come pick up the case. So it's not a state case no more. So the feds come, I think it's U.S. Marshals, they pick him up and they send him to a federal detention center. Now he's at the federal detention center. And he's feeling in his heart, he said, you know what, dude, dude, I'm dude, I'm not guilty of nothing, man. All I had was a broken tail light. But not knowing that's still a broken law for illegal entry, right? And that's his second time, right? So he goes see the judge. Everybody's telling him, hey, take a plea and do 5 years. He's like, man, I already did 2 years for this, man. I ain't gonna do no 5 years for illegal entry. I'm gonna fight this. I'm gonna take it to trial, and I'm gonna fight for it, because listen, since I've been here since the 90s, I got a new family, I got a job, I got proof everything that I'm working, but of course under false documents, right? So that's another charge. So what happened was, my boy Miguel, right? He took it to trial. Now, remember, he would have got like 60 months or whatever if it's 5 years. I forgot what he would have got if he would have just took the plea, get his 5 years, and get deported. He ended up taking it to trial. He loses, right? Because it is illegal entry. And regardless, even though he had a broken tail light, he still was under the impression of breaking the law, which he did, you know what I mean? And at that time, it was hard for me to understand. I thought that was BS, but law is law, right? So he ended up taking the trial. He lost. He got 10 years. So that 5 years he would have got for a plea, instead he got 10. He had too much pride, and he didn't want to take the 5. And I kind of understand too, at that moment when you're heated and you felt that you was really trying to be a good person in the United States and staying out the way. You're not committing crime. You're working. But eventually, he get 10 years, right? So now he gets sentenced. Boom. Now he starts his time. He go to prison. And remember, now he got a new wife and he got a baby boy. And at that time, by the time he got in, he probably already did like a year and a half or 2 years in MDC LA, right? So his boy, I forgot, I think he was like 5 or 6 years old at the time. Now, as the years went by, me and Miguel become real good friends, Not only we do business with him, me contributing to his hustle, but we play chess. Sometimes I take him to church. We play handball. We take laps around the yard. We do push-ups. We do little dips. We do little pull-ups. And we just talk, right? And just become real good friends once in a great while. So sometimes I'll make some food, which is like a spread. Every time I cook food, and if I see him, man, I hook him up. I take care of him, you know what I mean? And stuff like that, And I had a lot more stories with this guy, right? But this is one of the funniest but sad story at the time. So one day I could tell like something was bothering him. So I would tell Miguel, I was like, hey man, what's up, man? You all right, man? So I would tell him, hey man, come to my spot, man, and let's talk, let's chop it up. So most times I'll let people vent, you know what I mean? And most times people, when they go through it, you just want to listen and not don't say nothing. So I was there just trying to be a friend. And he was a lot older than me. At that time, I was like 24 or 23 or something like that. And he was already like pushing 42 or 44 or something like that, right? And Miguel was in a he was a he had a, like a good strong mind. He was very disciplined. He was not into prison politics. He took care of himself physically. He was a runner. He didn't go crazy with weights, but he was into like body weight workouts. He liked doing burpees. He liked doing push-ups, but he liked running. He had a six pack. Man, the dude was in good shape, right? He was in good shape. He carried himself very well, and that's why I got to liking him, and I like to hang around him, right? Because he wasn't into that BS that goes on in prison. So we started talking, and he's like, "Man, I was calling my wife earlier today, and I was like, oh man, it's one of them stories, right? Because most times a person's relationship in the free world will break a man's spirit, break a man's mind in prison. Just knowing that what is going on and you have no control. All you could do is hear that person's voice, read their letters, and if he's lucky, get a visit. I don't think Miguel was getting visits because he wasn't fortunate like that, right? So I knew when he brought up his lady, so I knew what kind of problem this was. So I didn't say a word. I was just there to listen. So now Miguel tells me, he goes, so I call home and he goes, my son picks up the phone. And when his son picks up the phone, he tells his son, hey, papi, this is me. This is your dad, And his son goes, my dad? You're not my dad. He goes like that. You're not my dad. My dad's over here on the sofa with my mom. And my boy, man, he told me when he heard that, his heart dropped. And he didn't know how to react. And he didn't know what to tell the boy. Because he felt, the boy was, he didn't want to confuse the boy or nothing like that. Or his son, right? So he was like, he was like paused. And the kid was like, hello. And then he said he heard his wife in the background saying, hey, who is that? Like, or whatever, in Spanish, was telling her son, was like, who is that? And the boy was like, oh, some guy trying to say he's my dad on the phone. And then he hears his wife tells him, hang up the phone. Hang up the phone. So he hangs up the phone, and my boy, he don't know how to react, right? So, and it just crushed him. Like his whole world went down. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of the worst feelings you can have while you in prison, knowing that your wife is telling you she's being faithful and she's holding it down. She's holding it down with your son, and just trying to be a good woman out there, So, and then eventually, and I'm very sure that he would always check up on her like every 3 months, 4 months. Like I said, he was not very fortunate financially, and every money he made hustling, either he was saving it when he gets deported, or you gotta eat in there, because 3 meals, you still want other food as well. And not every meal in prison is good, right? I mean, we're still grateful, but it's not as good that what you can get from commissary. So when he told me that, and I was like, I didn't have no words. My heart dropped the way how I heard the story, right? And so when he told me, and I was like, man, so what you gonna do, And he's like, I'm gonna move on. And I was like, I mean, you ain't got no choice, right? I mean, plus you getting deported. And I go, what were you trying to do when you was gonna get deported? Because your wife was still in the States with your boy. What was your plan? He was like, I honestly didn't have no plan. I don't know if I was gonna try sneak back. I don't know if I was gonna try bring them over. I don't know what I was gonna do, but this just sealed my fate, meaning I have to just move forward now. But literally, he was down and he was sad because that was his second family. That was his second illegal entry. That was his second arrest. He lost both families for getting caught and getting deported. And now he was just like, now I just gotta move forward and start my own family in Mexico. But he still had a long way to go, and he still had a lonely road to walk of the situation with this emotional feeling that he had to ride on this roller coaster, right? And man, it was to me it was funny later, but at the moment I was sad, right? I was like, damn, man, I'm sorry, you know what I'm saying? Sorry to hear that, but yeah, that was just a story that I want to share in prison sometime. When people either go to prison or they go to military, these are the kind of things that can really break a man in prison when they hear these stories when their family is being torn apart from them. But you can't get mad. You have to accept the consequences of going to prison, and things like this happen. And people don't understand these kind of situations, how it's like when you're in prison and you hear these kind of stories, right? There is no control. All you gotta do is just deal it with your just you and your emotions. You gotta soak it in, you gotta marinate it, and you gotta roll with it. You know what I'm saying? So that was a story about my boy Miguel, man. Miguel Robles, man, out of Mexico. He was a second time offender of illegal entry. He got 10 years taking to trial. And then he hears this news, hearing it that his wife is with another dude through his son, when his son told him, man, you ain't my dad. My dad's over there in the sofa. So yeah, that was a little short story that I want to share today about my boy. It was a little prison story about my boy Miguel Robles. That's how it is sometimes, man. When you're behind walls, there's many stories like that. Many tough situations for men who can easily break. Lucky my boy Miguel was a strong man. Like I said, he was a noble person. He carried himself very well. He was very fit. So all those kind of things came into hand to make him be stronger in situations like that. He might have been crumbling for that moment, and I don't know how many days, but eventually he overcomes it. He had no choice, right? And hopefully, man, I don't know, how is he doing in Mexico? We never kept in touch. I remember when he left, but he kind of left on a bad notice, meaning like not him doing something scandalous. They have these guys, they're called the body snatchers, where these federal institution, they come and they'll scoop up like so many prisoners or inmates, and they will transfer them to another prison, and we didn't have a chance to say goodbye or nothing like that, but man, he lives in my memory, man, as a good dude, because we used to kick it tough and stuff like that. So yeah, that was my story today, man. It was about my boy Miguel, who got deported twice, and then he had a sad story with his wife, hearing it from his son, right? Which his son didn't know what was going on. So I hope you like this story. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.